Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Questioning a better way, one gracefully disruptive conversation at a time.
Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila. I'm so excited to be with you here today. We've got an exciting one. We have fitness family in the house. And if you listen to Turmeric and Tequila, you know these are some of my most favorite conversations. Before we jump in, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors, Lux Neuro, offering neurofeedback and counseling where your heart and mind align. For more information about what neurofeedback can do for you, listen to the neurofeedback stories of transformation in the middle of this podcast. Neurofeedback effectively treats everything from insomnia, anxiety, depression, trauma, ADHD, and much more. Optimize your brain. Special thank you to Declan James Watches, veteran and local Colorado owned. 10% of all their proceeds go back to the Navy SEAL Foundation. So go check out their situation, especially during this gift giving time of year. And finally, Colorado Clownfish Swim School, lessons in water safety training for all ages. We believe in life skills through sports. Come waterproof your family today. Go check them out. Local family owned. Let's jam. Without further ado, Susan L. Combs, welcome to Turmeric and Tequila.
Thank you.
We're ready to go. So before we got on the mic, we were talking about CrossFit. We have deep roots, deep family in common. So it's always cool to see where our fitness lines run.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was like, do you know this person? Do you know that person? It was like, yes.
That was literally like our cardio. We should, I don't have my heart monitors or Whoop on or anything. Our heart rate was probably elevated though.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. And I had a horrible workout of 75 strict pull-ups. And then every time you failed, you had to do 5 wall walks today. So, I don't have much left in me today.
Oh, that's a skinny kid workout right there.
It was stocked.
Yeah, that's pretty brutal. The good news is we can complain about CrossFit, but what I love that Susan's done is she's roped in her cause, her heart space, and her professional skill set into what she's doing for a good cause alongside our fitness community. So, that's my favorite. I don't always read bios, but I want to read hers because I think it's really outstanding and dials in and covers all the boxes as she does. But Susan L. Combs has learned many lessons in life, and she has held on to the advice that has guided her on her journey. One of them has been taken from her tiny town of Missouri to the hustle of New York City. She has faced immense grief and fostered immense growth personally and professionally. Through it all, she leaned on the guidance from many mentors in her life. One of those mentors was her father, Roger. He wore many hats as a judge, a veteran, and 2-star major general, a leader in the community, a loving husband. And as we learn in her book, which we will talk about, he was one hell of a dad. He passed away in 2018, but his legacy lives on through this book and her mission, Pancakes for Roger. And a portion of the proceeds of the book go to the University of Missouri School of Law Veterans Clinic. So we've got a lot to talk about. But on TNT, before we get to the mission, I want to talk about the human behind the mission. Tell us about young Susan. And was any of this entrepreneurial charity giving heart a sign very early on?
My dad was always very philanthropic, but it was but quietly. So it was interesting. Actually, when he passed away and I was going through papers and things like that, I would just find these random receipts of him building a well in Africa. And I'm like, what? It's just I had no idea. But entrepreneurial wise, yeah, it's just, my mother had a business when I was growing up. She started that business. She started Merle Norman Cosmetics Studio in King City and also a travel agency. And when I was 8, so every day after school, I would go there and help do inventory and wrap gifts. And, later on, she taught me how to do makeovers because I think she didn't think I'd make it in college and she wanted me to have a backup plan. I'm like, thanks, Mom. That's great. Have some confidence in me. But, and then just my dad was a hustler. It's just, my dad had 2 full-time jobs my entire life. He was in the military, and then a civilian life, he was a prosecuting attorney and then ultimately a judge. So I just, I always saw my dad he had that drive, and he and I were just 2 peas in a pod too. So I was kind of like a mini Roger Combs for sure growing up. My dad always laughs. He always said that, I wore glasses ever since I was 6 years old. And he used to say when I was 6 years old, I would ask him, what time's my eye appointment? And then he said, at 6, you set your own alarm You got up, you got yourself dressed, ready. And he said, you were sitting by the door 15 minutes before we had to pull out of the driveway.
Oh
It was like, I was just like that kid. So I don't know. I mean, I think I was born type A.
Yeah.
For sure.
That's so well. I definitely think it's in the stars early. And I was 100% the opposite of you, where I was like, when he drug out of the bed, I'm like, I don't need glasses. I don't, whatever. But then we figured out once I was awake, I was good. But like morning punctual, that was not my vibe.
Yeah, that's my brother.
Okay. You took all the stuff ahead of the game and now he can just kick back and chill. But so this is wild. Did you have military experience yourself? Like, was that obviously an inspiration from your dad, or was it just the type A through your own entrepreneurial pursuits?
I was ROTC. I actually had a full ride in college
Okay.
in chemical engineering. And I did that for a couple of years. And then when I said to the Air Force, so my scholarship was chemical engineering, and then they let me change to mechanical engineering. Then they let me change to atmospheric science, which is just weather. I remember my dad saying, "What, you want to be a weather bunny?" And I was like, "Thanks, Dad." Thanks. But then when I went non-technical, the Air Force was like, "Yeah, we're not going to pay for that." When I was like elementary education, they're like, "Yeah, Miss Combs, go right ahead. We're not going to pay for it." And I said, "Well, okay, then I'm probably not going to sign 6 years of my life." So I actually, when I went non-technical, that's when I pulled out of ROTC, but I still have tons of friends, and it's kind of annoying because like all of them are like retiring as generals now and lieutenant colonels. And I was like, I could have a pension, I mean, I should have like stuck it out there. So, but I was around the military my entire life. I mean, my father served for 39 years and 4 months. And so he started out actually as a Marine Corps helicopter pilot, and then he was Army, and then he was Air Force when he ultimately retired.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I have two brothers in the military. Actually, both of them are out of it at this point, but always have a special space in my heart for military. And a lot of our CrossFit family hails from military or first responders or some sort of service men and women. So, their jobs are hard. I always tease, like when I roll to the gym, I'm like, I do marketing branding. Like I'm stressed out and it's hard, but like y'all are saving lives. Like you guys are doing really big things. So I can see how this gym is a necessary piece of the mental health. Did you find that with CrossFit? Was that a good balance for your world?
Yeah. And also too, I to be honest, I found CrossFit the year my father passed away. And so CrossFit, I really, and like, I'm sure you have people that are listening and things like that have been caregivers, and anybody that's been a caregiver, you know how important it is to fill your cup. And so for me, I had to fill my cup every single morning because I knew if I had to give everything else away the rest of the day, at least I had that 1 hour for myself. So, my husband and I started doing CrossFit like in, I want to say like March of 2018. And then my father actually passed away in August 2018. And so when I went back home to Missouri to help care for him when he was on hospice, that was the one thing I stayed religious to. I mean, I'd get up, at 5 a.m, check on him. If he was okay, I'd go to the gym. I'd do the work, and do the WOD that, our gym had planned for the day. I'd come back and I'd, check on him again, and then I'd get ready for the day and then just get him ready for the day. So it was one of those things that it really kept me sane. It really kept me sane. And, and then just the community. I mean, when my father passed away, I mean, how supportive they were, to check on me and see if I needed anything. And then just the continuing support since we, Pancakes for Roger started out as like a fundraising effort for the Veterans Clinic. And then it turned into a keynote, and then it turned into a book. And then last December, it became a nonprofit. And CrossFit's been very, very supportive of the community as well. So that's really cool.
Absolutely. Before we jumped on the mic, and if you listen to Tequila, I always say CrossFit has been the best filter for the best people in my world, from, personal support to fitness, competition to business and helping my business run and being representatives of Turmeric and Tequila rocking the t-shirt. I mean, the crew shows up and I always try and show up for them. But the through line that's really beautiful is we all kind of have that similar drive to just get better, every single day. And it doesn't mean you have to go to the CrossFit Games, or maybe you're brand new. We had a new guy actually today, and I was like, man, I remember my first day and this dude was just struggling. But it's like the first day is always the best day. But you have that underlying tone of like, you're just showing up to do something better, and then that trickles through everything else you do in life. So you just immediately have like these like-minded humans that are just on board with you. It's a really, really magical thing.
Yeah. Well, my husband always says too, he's like, the cool thing about CrossFit is everybody's doing the same work. Like
Yeah.
everybody's, struggling and it's hard. And, and you're doing it, like you said, to better yourself. And so it's almost like that mutual admiration and mutual respect for each other too. That it doesn't matter if you're scaling or doing RX or RX plus or whatever. It just, you're still competing within yourself. I mean, I am super competitive. So I will say that I'm like, yeah, I outbenched that guy today and, and feel pretty good about it. But it's still that bond that I travel a lot for work and I drop in at boxes. I will say I didn't drop in Colorado because I did the Mannion WOD like at a hotel gym and I thought I was going to die. Yeah, I'm friends with Ryan, his sister, and so so when I recruited a couple of people to do that, and we were going to drop in on a gym, and I was like, we can do this at the hotel in Aurora. We were sucking wind so bad because it's just like the altitude. I mean, literally we had landed the day before. So I was like, I have too much of an ego to get my ass handed to me at a Colorado gym until I was acclimated.
Well, you're more than welcome to drop in Palladium anytime, standing invite. But also, funny story, I knew Ryan in college. One of my friends dated a midshipman, and we did, I don't know if I can say initiation, but we did our welcome party for our freshmen at the wrestling house. So we knew Ryan. Yeah. And it's such a small world. And then one of my good CrossFit friends out here now runs Team Red, White, and Blue. So they do similar things, but different. But we reached out to them and did a couple. So small ass world. But
that's so cool.
Yeah, come to Palladium anytime, and you can just do it to the side or during off hours. Like no one, it's really it's chill. So
I appreciate that.
The hotel workout's always the worst, and everyone in there thinks you're a weirdo because you're doing like weird stuff, and it's a vibe for sure.
Well, and I'll tell you, I hate doing a squat on a Smith machine. I think Smith machines are just vile. And so I mean, I do a low bar back squat anyway, so it's just like to try to do that on a Smith because I'm just like, how much weight is this really? Because it doesn't feel like and I use the guys bar too, because girls bars didn't exist. I've been weightlifting since I was in 5th grade. So it's just like, it's not like there was a girls bar at the gyms when we were growing up, right? It was like the girls bar. I never heard of a girls bar until I started CrossFit. And I'm like, I'm going to go, I know the math on a boys bar. I'm just going to stick with that.
Totally. I was here for the women's bar because I have tiny hands. This is such a lame thing. In CrossFit, you find out weaknesses you never otherwise know in life. But my grip was okay, but I have really small hands. So anytime it was like bar to pull up or bar to muscle up, like my grip would give. So I would always try and find like the thinnest pull-up bars, the thinnest bars, because it would like, and if you're doing multiple workouts a day, like all those little efficiencies, you have to do all this kinds of crazy stuff. Anyways, I was here for the skinny bar, but those little things really do make such a difference. It's wild. But anyways, beyond CrossFit, if you're CrossFit listening, you're loving this. If not, you're like fast forwarding. But we'll get into the major point. And the cool thing about CrossFit, the through line here is you can be training with anyone. You don't know if they're a Navy SEAL. You don't know if they're a teacher. You don't know if they're running a hospital. Like there's some really undercover gangsters in the mix. And you don't know. You never know what anyone does. But again, it's like kind of like really mission driven people. So I think they're excited when people like you show up and you're like, well, I'm doing this. My dad, did this in X amount of years as a veteran. And here's what we're doing. They're excited about what you've got going on. So tell us about Pancakes for Roger and like really how it started and what is it today?
Yeah, so it started out actually just as a simple request from my father for pancakes. I mean, the last year of his life, he was on a feeding tube. He was also on oxygen. And like I said, we kind of had that cadence in the morning of me going to the gym and checking on him and stuff like that. And so one morning when I had gotten cleaned up for the day, and we were fortunate enough to actually have hospice at home. Okay. So my dad, since he was in the military for a very long time, he was an early adapter to long-term care insurance. So we were able to have hospice at home, and my mom, we had his hospital bed in what he called his I love me room. And my mother's like, I don't even know why we even bothered picking paint, because he had all these awards and accolades and pictures that you couldn't even see. You couldn't see what the paint was. And so one morning I went to his hospital bed to get him kind of rallied around and get his tube feeding done. And he wasn't in his bed. And so my parents' house went around in a circle, all the different rooms. So I just went in the circle and went to the living room. He wasn't there, went to the bathroom, wasn't there. And then eventually got to the kitchen, and he had the placemat out and he had set the table. And I looked at him and I said, well, Dad, what are you doing? And he said, I want pancakes for breakfast. And, my dad had never, ever asked for anything and never complained. He was military, right? Like he knew like this is what the cross to bear. And I'm, this is how it is. And there's no use complaining because it's not going to change anything.
Yeah.
And so I looked at him, I said, oh, Dad, there's nothing more than I want to give you them pancakes for breakfast. But I said, we're on hospice here. We have a DNR. I said, if I give you pancakes and you choke, I said, I think we're done here. And I don't think we're quite ready to be done. And he said, oh, yes, I can. Matt said I could. And Matt's my brother and he's a nurse and he wasn't there that morning. So I knew that we were dealing with some oxygen deprivation, and which leads to confusion. And so I looked at him and I said, well, let me see what I can do. So I took his tube feeding formula over to the microwave because the general always wanted it heated up for 14 seconds, never 12, never 6, like he would know. He would know. And so I put it on the table and he said, what's that? And I said, well, that's your syrup. And so his oxygen levels kind of started rallying around and he kind of smiled and he nodded and he was, he's like, okay. And so a few weeks later, my father would pass away. And so I took one day off work when I came back to New York. I just needed one day to just shut out the noise, ignore my freaking phone. I swear like a sailor, so I'm trying to keep it clean.
Oh, no, you're good. Do you?
But I was just like, let me just take one day. And so my husband said to me, he's like, why don't we go have some pancakes for your dad? And so we went to the Bel Air Diner in Queens, New York. And my husband took a picture of me. And I told the story on social media. And I said, you know what? We all have things to be thankful for in our lives. And all of our lives can change in a blink of an eye. If you're so inclined, why don't you go out and have some pancakes for Roger and remember all the good things you have in your life to be thankful for. And so, Kristen, I was just talking. It wasn't supposed to go anywhere. I was just, sharing some of my sorrow. I wrote a lot during, when my dad was sick, because I write for a couple of magazines and they gave me the platform to talk about caregiving and things like that. And so I was just talking and then people started having pancakes and they started texting me pictures and they say, I can't think about military service except for when I see pancakes now. And I can't not think about your dad when I have pancakes. And so, then we kind of started thinking about it. And my dad's birthday was February 22nd. And so what we decided to do is every month of February, for every pancake loving picture we get on social media using the hashtag pancakes for Roger, or they can tag our social media account as long as they're public facing posts, we make a donation to the University of Missouri School of Law Veterans Clinic in his honor. So the clinic provides free legal services for veterans and their families, navigating the VA claim and appeals process, discharge upgrades, and just, a lot more. They just celebrated, this past January, they celebrated 10-year anniversary of the clinic, and they brought in over $16 million of back pay for veterans since they started. Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible.
And it's incredible, and so, I've learned so much during my work with them. My father's claim for the VA took 3 years and we thought that was horrible. Yeah. And then when you go onto the VA website, it says on average claims take 7 years. Mm-hmm. And 14% of our veterans die during that process. And so it's unacceptable, but it's just like, how can we do better? Mm-hmm. And so, so Pancakes for Roger just started as fundraising efforts. And then I had a lot of people after me to write a book for a long time. And when I publicly speak, I had always ended my talks with unsolicited advice. And it was like fun little quotes from people I've gotten along the way. And I always thought, oh, that'd be cool to turn into a book. Like the quotes, the name of the chapter, give the backstory about the person, and then how you can use the information. So my dad was supposed to be a chapter in the book. Okay. And then the general took over the whole freaking thing. But to be honest, your listeners that have lost somebody that was, such a pivotal person in a family, there's always somebody that has to step into those shoes within the family. Yep. And since I thought so similar to my dad, it was, 8 bank accounts, 7 properties, military pension, judge's pension. There was just a lot. And so I was thrown into work mode, Arlington, the VA. It's just like, because my father was ultimately buried at Arlington. And so I threw myself into so many of those work, what I called family office. Literally the first year my dad was gone, I scheduled 4 hours a week. So on 2 separate days of what I called family office time, because I knew my mother was going to be getting so many, things in the mail, not to know what to do. And she knew, okay, Tuesday and Friday afternoons from 2 to 4 p.m., that's my time with Susan. She's going to call me. I'm going to open the mail. I'm going to show her what I got, and we're just going to talk through stuff. And then it also, for me, since, I own an insurance brokers and consulting firm, and I do a lot of expert witnessing in addition to the nonprofit, I needed to be able to compartmentalize that stuff, because if you're going through a family tragedy and family crisis, it can take care over everything. Right. And if you don't set aside that time, I knew, like, when I start to get anxious and something would come in, I'm like, put it in the meeting request on the calendar. Like, it's there. I know that I'll get to it. So then it just gave me that peace that I could, focus on work and what I needed to do, but then focus on the family stuff when I need to focus on it. Oof. So, with the book, I mean, it was really my gift to myself. It was very cathartic. I mean, I literally ugly cried every week I wrote, because I didn't realize that I didn't get that grieving time. Like a lot of my family members did, because I didn't have time for it. I had to work. I had to handle that stuff. I remember my brother called me one time and he's like, "How's your week been?" I said, well, because, time is money for me. So I was like, well, I logged 14 hours of phone calls this week. I said, with the VA, with Department of Defense, with the judges. And my brother's like, well, can I help you with anything? And I'm like, well, not now. Like, I just did 14 hours of myself, but it's, God bless my brother. He's a good guy, but he says that, but he would have been like, okay, now what do I do? Like, what do I say? And I'm like, oh, just let me do it. So, then the book came out. And so part of the proceeds in perpetuity always go to the Veterans Clinic. But then I started thinking, like, there's got to be more that we can do. And because the clinic's incredible, I will always have an affinity for the clinic, and I will always support the clinic. But I was like, there's got to be more things that we can do. And so, last December, December 2023, I incorporated as a nonprofit. And so, our mission is, to connect veterans with pathways to basically do good in their communities. So, we've been able to partner with some different, veterans nonprofits. We've supported just veteran and first responders kids projects, like their fundraising projects. Right now we're working on providing a grant to a veteran in New Hampshire that he's going to be getting out of a rehab facility for a hip replacement. Okay. And there's a couple of people that are kind of caregivers for him. And they were just like, hey, we can, we need help getting connected to the VA so that we can get a ramp. And I'm like, don't waste your time. I mean, you can't get a ramp in a month from the freaking VA. I mean, it's just it. Yeah. So I was just like, we can help with money for materials. And then there's great contractors out there that do some pro bono stuff for veterans, and they'll implement and build the ramp type of thing. So, but I have big aspirations. I think eventually we'll do like a soldier Shark Tank.
Okay.
Because it's just, I started my first company when I was 26, and, if somebody had said, here's $5,000, that would have changed my life. Yeah. It's just like, a lot of times with these small businesses and things like that, they don't need the $100,000. They don't need the $1 million, capital and stuff like that. $5,000 to, like, set up a website, get insurance, incorporate your business, things like that.
Just the basics. Yeah. Well, and you also need that lack of funds. So ideas, innovation, other things happen. If you're gifted, $100,000 plus or something, I've seen way many, trust fund babies where they go out there and he fails in 6 months because it was just too easy.
Yeah. I agree with you. So, so there's, we're super excited. I mean, we did our first, we called it the dragon slaying competition this past year. We're going to do 2 in person in 2025. So we're going to do one in New York and one in New Hampshire. So we basically, schedule around the CrossFit games because we want to make sure, because, it's like, and also too, like in my head, since we had always done the picture campaign in February, when I incorporated, I had in my head, we got to do everything in February. We got to do a competition in February. We got to do this in February. I screwed myself. I mean, I was like, I was nuts. I mean, it was just like the year the book came out, it like, I was home 6 days, the entire month of February.
Wow.
Because I was just on the road going to these different events, and I'm like, okay, we got to pull this back. And then now that we're a nonprofit, we're like, oh, we can do things throughout the year. I mean, this past February, we did, we got pictures in all 50 states, all 7 continents, and 29 additional countries.
Okay.
And so, we just started, like, we launched our new sponsorship packets and things like that. And the highest sponsorship packet they're going to be featured on a billboard in Times Square. So we were
okay.
actually,
How'd
as
you
an
guys get that? I'm very curious.
a marketing company. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And my PR manager found it too. So she's very
Okay.
good and innovative on looking at those things. So we were actually featured on the billboard on Veterans Day, thanking veterans. So that was pretty cool. And then we do contests for pancakes in February. So like the most patriotic, the most creative place, and then we let the public vote on them. So this year, what we're going to do is when people vote on them, then the winners are going to be featured on a billboard as well. So that'll be pretty cool.
Oh my gosh, I love this. It's kind of wild how everything, obviously this comes from very personal, like, massive heart space thing, but also now, with losses can provide so much energy and enthusiasm and, mission for your own life. And it's to, where it can go any which way. Like you can do so many things from here, and it's not just, work. Like I'm here, like I have a consulting firm and, we do these things. And like, I specifically seek out mission-driven humans doing mission-driven things because it adds a different layer to the entire agenda of work. So it has to be a major driver, not only for you personally, but, to bring that personal into the professional has to be like an incredible situation for your experience.
Hi there. This is Laura Mahoney from Lux Neuro, Neurofeedback and Counseling. We are bringing you stories of transformation each podcast. Imagine how we can transform your life. Long COVID. I had COVID a few years ago. It was the worst, during and especially after. I never fully recovered from COVID until I started neurofeedback. It turns out I had long COVID, which for me meant napping 2 to 4 times a day. It was debilitating, so much so that I lost my life. My relationship suffered, and I even lost the small business that I loved and I owned. I serendipitously found neurofeedback, and it has absolutely transformed my life. After COVID, napping was a part-time job, taking up to 20 hours or more per week of my time. After starting neurofeedback treatments, my fatigue went away, and with it, the napping. I am so happy to say that I am now present in my life and no longer take naps. I love connecting with my family and friends again, and I have time to be with them. I also am now looking for a job, something that I didn't think would ever happen again. Feeling trapped and hopeless in my life has been replaced with a lust for life, and I can't wait to see what my future holds. All thanks to neurofeedback.
Absolutely. And that's why we intentionally made the mission broader, because by making it broader, if somebody comes to us and says, like, I have an idea, instead of being like, no, it doesn't fit the mission, we can be like, how can we get it done?
Right.
Like, how can we do it? How can we accomplish this? So we actually, I don't know if you guys can see this, but we actually had challenge coins that we had made too. We actually just got them a few weeks ago. So we're super excited. So with like our different sponsorship levels and things like that, people will get a challenge coin in the mail, and they're just like a really cool leave behind. So, my husband and I actually just recently moved to New Hampshire. And so we joined a new gym out here. And so, I've met a couple of people that are in the military. So I was like, oh, you need a challenge coin. You need a Pancakes or your challenge coin. And, but it also, it starts a conversation. So, it's a couple of veterans that they're going to be getting out, and the wife is like, oh, I need help with a claim. And I'm like, we can connect you to the right people to get you, on the right direction. Because a lot of times with VA claims, it's just bureaucratic bullshit. And it's like, you mark the wrong box, or you didn't check this box, or you forgot this one sheet, or you didn't flip over the page. And it's just like, you just need a little bit of hand holding so that you can be like, okay, let me know the right thing to do here. So,
right. Well, and that's so frustrating because our humans that signed up to give and serve, like the fact that we don't support them in all capacities on the way back. I'm, like I said, 2 military brothers, and then deep on the health and wellness side. So everything from brain training, like our head sponsor, Lux Neuro, is all about neurofeedback and neuromodulation and can get you off pills and drugs. And there's a space for some of that. But the VA is also tied to, a lot of big pharma and some other strategic partnerships. So it's a lot of medication. I do have faith things are getting better, and I'm not an expert in that space, but like you're saying, I always think advocate for yourself and then lean on your community, ask questions, find people that know more than you. And 9 times out of 10, they're willing to help. They're willing to, if they can't help you, they'll find someone that will, especially if you're a veteran. Like our people, whatever side you vote, care about our people that serve. Like it's, I think, a universal love in our country that regardless of what you believe or what you do, people really care about veterans and they want to help. Sometimes they just don't know how, but the fact that you guys are doing this and there's resources, but also there's people like you that know how to help them to use those resources. Cause I think there's a lot of stuff people just sometimes don't know what to do or where to go.
Yeah. I mean, so one of our board members, he was a paratrooper in Desert Storm, and he said, I had never heard of a veterans clinic until you.
Really?
And because it's just like, and that's the thing. I mean, it's just like a lot of times, I think there's also a misconception, it's like you might have some listeners that are like, oh, she said University of Missouri. I didn't go there. I'm not from Missouri. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So it's just like, if they think they can help you, they'll help you. So, I always tell people like, reach out to me, Susan at pancakesroger.org. And if I can connect to the right people, I will. I always tell people like pretty much most major universities at this point have a veterans clinic.
Okay.
And so, the quote unquote best ones are like Yale, Syracuse, and the University of Missouri. I mean, those are the most well-known that have made the biggest impacts. Like I said, Mizzou has brought in over $16 million in 10 years. They actually do a veterans symposium every single year with a different topic. So it might be, PTSD, it might be TBIs one year, it might be, veteran suicide one year, it might be, sexual misconduct. I mean, they've done things like that too. But then they also have this program. I grew up in a town of 1,000 people in Missouri. And so very, very small, very rural. My grandparents were dairy farmers. My dad was literally born on the farm. But they have this whole program called Tigers for Troops. And so the University of Missouri are the mascots, the Tigers. And so these students, these law students, are actually going out into these rural communities, going to the VFWs and everything like that, just sitting down with them, saying, bring your file in. Let us help you go through it, see if there's anything there. Because a lot of times, you just don't know. Yeah. Or it's just like you get people that, especially Vietnam era, that maybe they were stationed here in the US and they think that they're not eligible for Agent Orange related claims. If those guys were unloading anything from those cargo containers and things like that, they were probably exposed. So it's just like, so there's claims that are coming in that even somebody that wasn't stationed over in Vietnam. I mean, my dad, when he was diagnosed 10 years before he passed away, his first claim was denied by the VA. And then we found out the 4 other helicopter pilots that were all with my dad all had the same type of cancer. Because, of course, they said, did you smoke or drink? Because it's Agent Orange related throat cancer. Did you smoke or drink? Yeah, everybody did that. But then when we found out 4 other veterans all had the same type of cancer, we're like, it's just too much, 2 similarities. So that's what kind of fueled him to push forward. And, my father did well in his life, did well in his career. But the reason he had such a passion to continue on is because he knew that would help other veterans, that maybe weren't as fortunate financially as my father was. So that's a thing to think about. Like, I learned so much with this process. I've always been somebody, I'm not afraid to ask for help. I'm not afraid, like I'm very tenacious. So what I call tenacious is the ability to find the answer. Mm-hmm. So I'm okay saying, hey, I don't know, but I'll find out. And I'm really good at knowing like, who do I know that I can get the answer that can get me to the right person, that I can like have the best result possible. And so before my dad passed away, he and I sat down twice. And we spreadsheeted everything. My dad told me who the plumber was, who the electrician was, who to sell the Winnebago to, who to sell the guns to, just where to go for everything. And so, and he gave me, General George White, who was a good friend of my dad's, who's also an attorney. He said, call him for anything VA related. And before my dad passed, George is like, make sure that you get Agent Orange related throat cancer on the death certificate.
Okay.
I wouldn't have known to do that if somebody didn't tell me to. I wouldn't have done anything. Like I would have missed that one.
Yeah.
And he said, Susan, he was just like, it builds a record. And he said, it builds a record for the next guys that are coming down the pike.
Yeah.
And so I literally remember, again, small town, 1,000 people. I grew up across the street from the funeral home. He used to babysit those kids. They used to ride down the ramp on a coffin cart. They're good kids. But the coroner came over, and I looked at him and I said, "Okay, I'm not trying to tell you how to do your job, but I'm going to tell you how to do your job." And my mom's like, "Have you met our daughter?" Yeah. And so I told him, I was like, "I need this on the death certificate." He's like, "Not a problem." So that's the thing. I mean, it's just like surrounding yourself, and it's just like, don't be afraid to ask the questions. I think that's so important. And
Absolutely.
knowing like who to get to that can just really kind of mentor you, because that's the thing. I mean, my dad and I were tremendously close, and there's been all these wonderful, great male mentors that worked with my father, whether it be in his judicial life or his military life or just family, that have like kind of come out of the woodwork and supported me when I've had questions or been like, hey, how would my dad have handled this? Or what do you think my dad would have thought if I was going to do X, with the farm? And they're like, okay, your dad would have liked this. He wouldn't like that. I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's huge. And I mean, again, the community. So it's kind of funny that CrossFit has webbed itself back into your world, because I mean, these are just really important spaces in life where you just straight up need community and that inside intel to really get to the bottom of things. And I think even if, the government, the FBI, whatever, or military veterans, everybody got really dialed in, you still need your insider baseball and the people around you to navigate systems accordingly. So that asking for help, I think, is the most critical piece. It's a wild thing, but on the flip side, I think it's really nice that you can get together for a cause and then, do these fun things, and then also have these conversations like where it's not like business hard agenda. You can just show up, have pancakes, and then also talk about like, this is what we do and this is what's offered. And it can be a lighthearted setting versus like always the heavy, kind of drudgery going into the VA, or having like, just hard conversations. Have you seen that some of the events people have, discovered you guys or reached out to you that didn't know that you existed?
I mean, we've built everything like by word of mouth and social media. I mean, It's just like, so it's just, now it's like, we've had people that have been, I mean, we have kids that are growing up on Pancakes or Roger, and that makes me so happy because like there's kids that, I mean, we've been doing this 6 years now. And so there's these kids that are like, hey dad, it's pancake month next month, and I mean, so they're talking about it. So it's just like, so, that warms my heart. But then, like after I do a podcast interview, I might get somebody that reaches out to me and said like, hey, my brother's having trouble with the claim. Can you help me out? Like, let me know who I should talk to or things like that. Or, you get somebody that reaches out and says like, hey, we have a veteran that is having trouble with X. Is there anything that you guys can do, to support? So, we're always open to those things. I mean, we're building our endowment, so we have to be conservative. And, I mean, and I will tell you, I know how to make money, and, but I've always been for profit. And so it's such a much different mindset when you technically own a nonprofit.
Yeah.
Because the dollars, you scrutinize over every single dollar you spent. I mean, because you're just like, this is the money that's supposed to be doing good for veterans. Like, how can we make sure that this money is used wisely and that can make the greatest impact as quick as possible type of thing. So
yeah.
It's very, very different mindset. Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of nonprofit. I've worked in the space. There's not a lot that do it really, really right. And you're buying a lot of CEO steak dinners, and there's a lot of gray area out there. So I appreciate your transparency in that, because like our people need to know. And the good news about social media, not only the exposure that makes it affordable, cost and time effective, is that our people can dig in. They can dig into the ethos of what you do, how you do it, why you do it. I know 501c3s have to disclose any which way, but our young people can get on TikTok and know where you train, how you do, you cheat on your workouts. They can get into the details of like anything. So it's big, but I love what you guys are doing. Hit us with what's coming up. Like, what can people get excited about? What should we look for?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're in giving season, right? So if anybody wants, find some money in the seat cushions, like feel free to throw them our way. But we're, like I said, we're going to have a couple of Dragon Slayer competitions this next year. We're super excited about that. We're talking about doing a couple of virtual challenges, and we're going to start to be able to take grant applications and award grants. So we're super excited about that. And then we're also doing there's a nonprofit called QRF Up. That focuses on PTSD and veteran suicide and kind of just like emergency response or rapid response. I mean, like QRF, but they're going to be launching nationally. They've been locally in the Midwest, but they're going to be launching nationally next year. And so what they do, which is pretty cool, is they have an app, and if say there's a veteran crisis, they can hit the button, and within 30 seconds, they get a call, a text, and an email.
Wow.
And so sometimes it's just like them having a conversation, talking things through, and then, kind of getting their feet underneath them again. But then if they need somebody responding, like within an hour, they can get to somebody that's 100 miles away. So they're training like these ambassadors and things like that with, therapists, just like the veterans clinic at Mizzou. It's kind of cool because they're training all these law students. And so these law students are then going to go on and have their careers, and they're going to be ambassadors for veterans, but they're also bringing in the medical students too. And so maybe they've been veterans, or maybe they're not, and they're just veterans family, but they can read the medical records and the claims information, and then they can make a greater impact when it comes to filing the claims too. So, what I get around, so it's just like if somebody's like, hey, we're going to have a big pancake breakfast, would you come and speak? If I can work it out in my schedule, I'd be more than happy to come. I'm not going to fly down to Antarctica, though I do get those guys to have pancakes for me. I've managed to get that worked out the past 2 years. And I have a friend that's specifically going to Antarctica to vacation in February just to get me a picture down there this next year. But yeah, just have pancakes in February. I mean, it's going to be here before we know it. Use the hashtag, tag our accounts, and, get creative and get fun. I mean, you and I were talking about Chad Schroeder before we started going. He actually went up during a lunch break and hiked up a mountain to have a pancake on top of a mountain. And he was a finalist for the most creative. But I will say the most creative place to have a pancake did go to Antarctica this year. Because we had somebody that I have a friend that owns a dry cleaner, and she brought in a whole bunch of pancakes, and there was a staff person that actually got into a dryer to eat pancakes for a picture. So have a good time with it.
There you go. Yeah. Okay. So hit us with website handles for social media. Give us, where do we find you?
Yeah. So, like me personally, I'm very Googleable. So if you just do Susan L. Combs, you'll find me. But the website is www.pancakesroger.org. We're on Facebook. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Instagram. We're on TikTok. I'm like, I got to think of all of the things now. But yeah, like our website has more about our mission. It has like the sponsorship levels. I will say we do a pancake map every year. So it's just like, we have people that like want to contribute like in like maybe they're like, I don't have thousands of dollars to give, but I can do $100. They can sponsor a state and put their logo on the state. So we just launched that for 2025. And so we're getting people that are like buying up the states because they want to make sure to get it, because last year people were like, what do you mean California's gone? I'm like, California's a big state. Like, we get a lot of people from there. So be checking the pancake map too.
All the things. You guys have everything covered, but I love it. We'll check it out. We'll do some representation in Colorado for sure. Come through Bladium, open anytime, but we will dig in. I'm excited to see how your journey continues to grow. All the things for our veteran. We really can't do enough for our men and women and humans of service. I really appreciate your time and energy. We'll of course post all the links and everything where you can find Susan and her link to the book on Amazon. We'll give some shout outs. My final question I like to ask everyone, what is success to you?
Success to me probably depends on what time of day it is. But success to me mostly, it's just like finding something that just fuels you. I mean, every single day. So maybe that's work one day. Maybe that's just, your workout one day. Maybe that's, you have a friend that's going through a rough time and you pick up the phone and kind of talk through a situation with them, and that's a success. So I think it really depends on what your day looks like. But I think you have to find one thing every single day that you can just do a little bit more, do a little bit better, and then pay it forward.
There you go. Amen. That's what's up. It is. Yeah, it's very interesting to hear. I love all those questions because everyone has something a little bit different, but usually filling your cup, doing something that's bigger than you. I appreciate your time and energy, what you guys have going on. Like I said, we'll represent in Colorado. I want to give a special thank you to our sponsor, Lux Neuro, offering neurofeedback and counseling. Lux Neuro wants to meet you. If you're ready to transform your life, visit them at luxneuro.com to schedule a consultation. Colorado Clownfish, if you are looking to be waterproof ready, go see them for all things water, swim lessons, and water safety. Check us out wherever you get your podcasts and look for this video on YouTube. Susan, thank you again. I really appreciate all that you're doing. And like I said, I'm really excited to see where this goes.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Tune in next time, and don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.